Everything you resist persists. Carl Jung said these words decades ago, but today, right now, as you're watching this video, your unconscious mind is screaming at you. It's begging, pleading, desperately trying to get your attention. But you're ignoring it, aren't you? You feel it in your chest, that restless energy, that nagging sensation that something needs to change. But you push it down, distract yourself. Tell yourself you're just being dramatic. Well, what if I told you that feeling isn't weakness? What if I told you it's your soul's emergency alarm, and ignoring it is slowly killing the person you're meant to become? Tell me in the comments right now, where are you watching this from? And more importantly, have you been feeling like something inside you has been desperately calling for change? Because if you have, you're not alone, and you're definitely not crazy. I want you to take a deep breath with me right now, really do it. Because what we're about to explore together isn't just another self-help video. This is about recognizing the voice of your deepest self, the part of you that Jung called the self with a capital S, the part that knows exactly who you're meant to be, even when your conscious mind is terrified of that truth. You know that feeling. When you wake up on a Monday morning and your whole body feels heavy, not tired heavy, but soul heavy. Like you're living someone else's life, like you're an actor playing a role that doesn't fit, wearing clothes that don't belong to you, speaking words that aren't yours. You look in the mirror and think, is this really me? Is this the life I chose or the life that chose me? Jung understood this better than anyone. He knew that our unconscious mind is constantly communicating with us, sending us signals, trying to guide us toward our authentic self. But we've been trained to ignore these signals, to dismiss them as inconvenient feelings or temporary phases. We've been taught that being responsible means staying in our lane, keeping our heads down, not rocking the boat. But what if the boat is sinking? What if staying in that lane is driving you toward a cliff? The truth is, your unconscious doesn't speak in words, it speaks in symptoms. It speaks in dreams that make your heart race. It speaks in that sudden urge to quit your job without having another one lined up. It speaks in that attraction to people who seem to live more freely than you do. It speaks in that inexplicable sadness that hits you when you're doing exactly what you thought you wanted to do. And here's what's really happening. Your unconscious mind is trying to save you from a life of quiet desperation. It's trying to prevent you from reaching the end of your days and realizing you never actually lived. It's sending you these signals, not to torture you, but to liberate you. But liberation requires courage, and courage requires acknowledging that something needs to die for something new to be born. I've been studying Jung's work for years, and I've seen this pattern in thousands of people. The ones who learn to listen to their unconscious signals, they transform their lives. The ones who keep ignoring them, they slowly fade away, becoming ghosts of who they could have been. They become what Jung called the living dead, people who are breathing but not truly alive. So which one are you going to be? The person who finally listens, or the person who keeps hitting the snooze button on their soul's alarm clock? Comment below and tell me honestly, have you been feeling that restless energy lately? That sense that your current life doesn't quite fit? Because recognizing it is the first step to understanding what your unconscious is really trying to tell. Your unconscious mind has been collecting data about you your entire life. It knows your patterns, your fears, your deepest desires that you've never even admitted to yourself. It knows when you're living in alignment with your true nature and when you're betraying yourself in small ways every single day. And when that betrayal reaches a certain threshold, it starts sending emergency signals. These aren't random feelings. These aren't just bad days or rough patches. These are your psyche's way of course-correcting, of trying to guide you back to yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are beneath all the roles, expectations, and masks you wear. But here's the thing that most people don't understand. Your unconscious doesn't care about your 5-year plan. It doesn't care about your mortgage or what your family thinks, or whether this is a convenient time for a major life change. Your unconscious cares about authenticity, about alignment, about you living as the fullest expression of who you came here to be. And that's terrifying for most people, because living authentically means letting go of the safety of conformity. It means potentially disappointing people who love the version of you that fits neatly into their expectations. It means facing the unknown, stepping into a version of yourself that you haven't fully met yet, But it also means coming alive in a way you've forgotten was possible. It means waking up excited about your day instead of dreading it. It means feeling like yourself in your own skin instead of like a stranger. It means creating a life that energizes you instead of drains you. The 7 signals I'm about to share with you aren't just interesting psychological concepts. They're a roadmap back to yourself. They're your unconscious mind's way of saying, I've been trying to get your attention, and now I'm going to be more direct about it. The first signal your unconscious sends is through your dreams. And I'm not talking about the occasional weird dream we all have. I'm talking about dreams that repeat, dreams that wake you up in a cold sweat, dreams that follow you into your waking hours like shadows you can't shake. Jung believed that dreams were letters from our unconscious and recurring dreams. Those are urgent telegrams. Maybe you keep dreaming about being lost. You're in a maze or a building with endless hallways, or a city where all the streets look the same. You're searching for something or someone, but you can never find your way. You wake up feeling frustrated, anxious, like you've been running all night, but getting nowhere. Your conscious mind dismisses it as stress, but your unconscious is showing you exactly how you feel about your current life. You're lost, and you know it. Or perhaps you dream about being unprepared. You're back in school and there's a test you forgot to study for. Or you're on stage and you've forgotten your lines. Or you're at work and you realize you're completely naked. These dreams aren't about school or work or public embarrassment. They're about feeling exposed, vulnerable, unprepared for the life you're actually living. Your unconscious is saying you're not ready for this version of yourself, that you need to prepare for something bigger, something more authentic. Some of you might be dreaming about flying, but you can never quite stay airborne. You lift off, and the ground, feel that incredible freedom for a moment, then crash back down. This isn't just a fun flying dream. This is your soul showing you what freedom feels like and simultaneously showing you what keeps pulling you back down. Your unconscious knows you're capable of soaring, but something in your waking life is clipping your wings. Write in the comments, what kind of dreams have been visiting you lately? Have they been trying to tell you something you've been afraid to hear? The second signal comes through a different channel entirely. It's that growing irritation with your daily routine, that feeling like you're allergic to your own life. You used to be able to go through the motions without thinking about it. Wake up, shower, coffee, commute, work, commute, dinner, television, sleep, repeat. It was fine, it was manageable, it was what adults do, but now every step of that routine feels like you're walking through quicksand. Monday mornings have become a special kind of torture. Sunday nights fill you with dread. So thick you can taste it. You find yourself scrolling through your phone for hours, not because you're interested in what you're seeing, but because the alternative is facing the reality of another day exactly like yesterday. You catch yourself fantasizing about calling in sick when you're perfectly healthy, not because you want to rest, but because you want to escape. This isn't laziness. This isn't weakness. This isn't even depression, though it might feel like it. This is your unconscious mind staging a rebellion. It's refusing to cooperate with a life that doesn't serve your authentic self. Jung would say your psyche is protecting you from sleepwalking through your entire existence. You might find yourself snapping at people for no reason, feeling irritated by conversations that used to be fine, rolling your eyes at activities that used to bring you neutral satisfaction. Your tolerance for anything that feels fake or meaningless drops to zero. Small talk becomes unbearable. Office meetings feel like prison sentences. Even hobbies you used to enjoy start feeling hollow. Your unconscious is essentially saying, I will not pretend this is fulfilling anymore. I will not help you maintain this charade. I'm going on strike until you pay attention to what we actually need. Tell me honestly in the comments, have you been feeling this resistance to your normal routine? What part of your day has become the hardest to face? The third signal is perhaps the most intriguing, and it's one that people often misinterpret as wanderlust or midlife crisis behavior. You start feeling an inexplicable attraction to things that are completely different from your current life. You're a corporate executive, but you find yourself obsessed with documentaries about people who live off the grid. You're a suburban parent, but you can't stop thinking about what it would be like to move to a different country where no one knows your name. You might find yourself drawn to people who seem to live more freely than you do. You follow them on social media. You read their books, you watch their interviews. Not because you necessarily want their specific life, but because they represent something you feel is missing from yours. They seem to have access to a version of existence that feels more vibrant, more real, more aligned with something you can't quite name. This attraction isn't random. Jung called this process compensation. When our conscious life becomes too one-sided, too narrow, too disconnected from our full potential, our unconscious starts pulling us toward the opposite direction. It's trying to balance the equation of who you are. If you've been living a very structured, predictable life, you might find yourself fantasizing about spontaneity and adventure. If you've been people-pleasing for years, you might be drawn to people who seem unapologetically themselves. If you've been playing it safe, you might feel an unexpected attraction to risk-takers and rule-breakers. But here's what's really happening. You're not attracted to their external circumstances. You're attracted to the internal freedom they represent. You're recognizing parts of yourself that have been dormant, aspects of your personality that have been waiting in the wings for permission to come forward. Your unconscious is showing you these examples not to make you feel inadequate about your current life, but to remind you that there are other ways to be human. There are other ways to structure a day, a career, a relationship, a life. The version of yourself you've been living isn't the only version available to you. Maybe you've been researching different careers that have nothing to do with your education or experience. Maybe you've been having conversations with strangers that feel more meaningful than conversations with people you've known for years. Maybe you've been drawn to books, movies, or music that seems completely out of character for you. Your unconscious is collecting these breadcrumbs, showing you glimpses of who else you could be. It's not necessarily telling you to quit your job and move to Bali, though for some people that might be exactly the right medicine. It's telling you that the person you are now is not the full story of who you could become, which brings us to the fourth signal, and this one might surprise you, because it doesn't feel psychological at all. It feels completely physical. Your body starts talking when your mind refuses to listen. Jung understood that the psyche and the soma, the mind and body, are not separate entities. They're two aspects of the same system, and when one is out of balance, the other will compensate or rebel. You might start experiencing unexplained fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. You go to bed tired, you wake up tired. You drag yourself through the day feeling like you're moving through thick fog. Your doctor runs tests. Everything comes back normal, but you feel like you're running on empty, even when you've had plenty of rest. This isn't medical fatigue, this is soul fatigue. Your unconscious is literally draining your energy because it's being forced to maintain a life that doesn't align with your authentic self. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're experiencing restlessness that has no outlet. You feel like you need to move, to run, to do something, but you don't know what. You pace around your house, you rearrange furniture, you start projects you don't finish. Your body is trying to discharge the energy of transformation that your mind isn't allowing to happen naturally. Some people develop what doctors call psychosomatic symptoms. Headaches that appear before certain meetings, stomach problems that flare up on Sunday nights, back pain that seems to correlate with stress but doesn't respond to physical treatment. Your body is holding the tension of living a life that requires you to constantly brace yourself against your own nature. You might notice changes in your appetite or sleep patterns that don't make logical sense. You're eating when you're not hungry, or you've lost interest in food entirely. You're staying up late not because you have things to do, but because sleep means facing another tomorrow that looks exactly like today. Or you're sleeping too much, using unconsciousness as an escape from consciousness that feels too painful to bear. Pay attention to what your body has been trying to tell you. Has it been staging its own form of protest? Comment below and share what physical symptoms you've been experiencing that might be connected to this deeper restlessness. The fifth signal is what Jung would call the activation of your shadow, though most people experience it as sudden, inexplicable. Self-sabotage. You're doing well at something, making progress, getting closer to a goal, and then you do something that undermines your own success. You sleep through an important meeting. You pick a fight with someone you care about right when things are going well. You make a decision that you know will complicate your life unnecessarily. On the surface, this looks like weakness or poor impulse control. But your unconscious isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to prevent you from succeeding at something. That isn't authentically you. If you're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall, your unconscious will knock you off that ladder before you reach the top and realize you've wasted years of your life. Maybe you keep sabotaging relationships that look perfect on paper, but feel emotionally empty. You start arguments, you withdraw, you create drama, not because you enjoy conflict, but because your unconscious knows this isn't the connection your soul actually craves. You'd rather be alone than pretend to be fulfilled by something that leaves you feeling more isolated than before. Or perhaps you sabotage career opportunities that would advance you in a direction you don't actually want to go. You show up late to interviews. You forget important deadlines. You say the wrong thing at crucial moments. Your conscious mind is frustrated, but your unconscious is protecting you from a promotion that would lock you deeper into a life that isn't yours. This self-sabotage often shows up around achievements that would make other people proud of you, but would move you further away from who you really are. Your unconscious doesn't care about impressing others. It cares about integrity, about the alignment between your outer life and your inner truth. The key is learning to distinguish between destructive self-sabotage and protective self-sabotage. Destructive self-sabotage prevents you from growing into your authentic self. Protective self-sabotage prevents you from growing into someone else's version of who you should be. Have you been getting in your own way lately? Have you been undermining your own progress in ways that don't make logical sense? Tell me in the comments about a time when you sabotaged something that looked like success but felt wrong deep down. The sixth signal connects to something Jung believed was essential for psychological health, but that our culture has largely forgotten. It's that growing nostalgia for who you used to be, specifically for the version of yourself that existed before you learned to be so practical, so responsible, so concerned with what other people think. You find yourself thinking about things you used to love before you were told they weren't practical career choices. You remember how it felt to spend hours doing something just because it brought you joy, not because it served any productive purpose. You think about dreams you had as a child or teenager that seemed perfectly reasonable then, but now feel naive and unrealistic. This isn't just wistful thinking about simpler times. This is your unconscious reminding you of aspects of your personality that have been buried under layers of adult responsibility and social expectations. That child who wanted to be an artist, a writer, an explorer, a teacher, a healer, they're still in there. They've been waiting patiently for you to remember them. You might find yourself drawn to activities you haven't done in years. You want to paint again or sing or dance or build things with your hands. You want to spend time in nature without any agenda other than being present. You want to have conversations about ideas rather than logistics. You want to play, really play. The way you used to before play became something you had to schedule and optimize. Jung believed that reconnecting with our childhood self wasn't regression, it was integration. He called it reclaiming the eternal child within us, the part that maintains wonder, creativity, and authentic desire in the face of a world that wants to make us practical and predictable. Your unconscious is calling you back to these earlier versions of yourself, not because you should become a child again, but because you need to integrate the wisdom and freedom of that child with the capabilities and resources you have as an adult. Imagine what you could create if you combined your current skills with your original enthusiasm. Imagine what your life would look like if you made decisions based on what genuinely excited you, rather than what seemed most responsible. What aspects of your younger self have you been missing lately? What did you love before you learned to be so cautious about loving anything too much? The seventh and final signal is perhaps the most mysterious, and it's the one that makes people think they're either going crazy or becoming spiritual, sometimes both. It's the dramatic increase in what Jung called synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem to happen more frequently when your unconscious is trying to communicate with you. These aren't random events. They're your psyche's way of using the external world to mirror your internal transformation. You start noticing that books fall off shelves and open to exactly the page you need to read. You overhear conversations between strangers that seem to be addressing your exact situation. You see the same numbers everywhere, or the same symbols, or you keep running into people who mention the same ideas you've been privately wrestling with. Songs come on the radio that speak directly to your current emotional state, sometimes with lyrics that feel like they were written specifically for your situation. Maybe you've been thinking about making a major life change, and suddenly, everywhere you go, you meet people who have made similar changes. You're considering a career shift, and you randomly sit next to someone on a plane who works in exactly the field you've been researching. You're questioning a relationship, and you keep seeing quotes about authentic love posted by people who don't usually share inspirational content. These synchronicities aren't the universe trying to make decisions for you. They're your unconscious mind's way of confirming that you're paying attention to the right things. When you're aligned with your authentic path, the world seems to conspire to support you. When you're moving in the right direction, doors open, resources appear, people show up to help in ways that feel almost magical. But here's what's really happening. When your unconscious is active, when you're in a state of psychological transformation, your awareness becomes heightened. You start noticing connections and patterns that were always there, but that your distracted, routine-focused mind usually overlooks. You become more sensitive to the subtle ways that everything is interconnected. Jung believed that synchronicities increase during periods of individuation, during times when we're becoming more authentically ourselves. It's as if the psyche, in its effort to guide us toward our true path, becomes more creative in its communication methods. It starts using the external world as a canvas for internal messages. Have you been experiencing more meaningful coincidences lately? Have you been noticing patterns or connections that feel too significant to be random? Share in the comments what synchronicities have been showing up in your life, because I guarantee others are experiencing similar phenomena. But synchronicities are just the beginning. What's really happening is that your unconscious is preparing you for a fundamental shift in how you relate to your life. It's not just sending you signals anymore. It's actively recruiting allies, both internal and external, to support the transformation it knows you need to make. You might find that your tolerance for superficial relationships suddenly drops to zero. Conversations that used to feel fine now feel like they're sucking the life out of you. You start craving deeper connections, more authentic exchanges, relationships, where you can show up as your full self, rather than just the parts that are socially acceptable. At the same time, you might discover that you're attracting different types of people into your life. People who seem more genuine, more creative, more willing to talk about meaningful things. People who ask you questions that make you think, rather than just make small talk. People who seem to be on their own journey of becoming more authentic. This isn't coincidence. This is your unconscious mind changing your energetic frequency. When you start living more authentically, even in small ways, you naturally attract people who resonate with that authenticity. You repel people who are threatened by genuineness, and you magnetize people who are hungry for it. Your unconscious is also becoming more selective about how you spend your time and energy. Activities that used to feel fine now feel like they're draining your life force. You might find yourself making excuses to avoid social gatherings that revolve around complaining or gossiping. You might lose interest in entertainment that feels mindless or negative. You start protecting your energy more carefully because you realize how precious it is. This can feel lonely at first, especially if your social circle is built around activities and conversations that no longer feed your soul. But what your unconscious is doing is creating space for new experiences, new people, new ways of being that align with who you're becoming rather than who you've been. You might also notice that your creativity starts flowing in unexpected ways. You have ideas you've never had before. You see solutions to problems that seemed impossible. You feel inspired to create things, build things, express things that have been dormant inside you for years. This isn't random creative energy. This is the energy that gets freed up when you stop using all your psychological resources to maintain a life that doesn't fit. Jung called this process the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to bridge the gap between who you've been and who you're becoming. It's not a comfortable process. It requires letting go of identities, relationships, and circumstances that have provided security but not fulfillment. It requires trusting that something better is possible even when you can't see exactly what that looks like. But here's what I want you to understand. These 7 signals aren't problems to be solved or symptoms to be medicated away. They're invitations to a more authentic way of living. They're your unconscious mind's way of saying that you've outgrown your current life, and it's time to step into a bigger version of yourself. The question isn't whether you're ready for this transformation. The question is whether you're willing to listen to what your deepest self has been trying to tell you, because ignoring these signals doesn't make them go away. It just forces your unconscious to get louder, more persistent, more creative in its attempts to get your attention. And eventually, if you keep ignoring these signals, your unconscious will stop asking politely. It will create a crisis that forces you to pay attention. Jung saw this pattern repeatedly in his practice. People who ignored their inner voice for too long would find themselves in situations where they had no choice but to confront the gap between who they were and who they were meant to be. Sometimes it's a health crisis that forces you to reevaluate your priorities. Sometimes it's the end of a relationship that seemed stable, but was actually slowly suffocating your authentic self. Sometimes it's losing a job that provided security but not meaning. Sometimes it's a depression so deep that your old coping mechanisms stop working entirely. These crises aren't punishments, they're interventions. They're your unconscious mind's way of creating the conditions for transformation when you won't create them voluntarily. It's like being in a burning building and refusing to leave until the floor collapses beneath you. Your unconscious would rather you walk out while the exits are still clear, but it will collapse the floor if that's what it takes to get you moving. But you don't have to wait for a crisis. You can start listening now. You can start responding to these signals while they're still whispers, instead of waiting for them to become screams. And the beautiful thing is, when you start paying attention to your unconscious mind, when you start honoring these signals instead of fighting them, your life begins to reorganize itself around your authentic self. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always comfortable. There will be periods of uncertainty, times when you feel like you're between identities, no longer who you were but not yet who you're becoming. Jung called this the liminal space, the threshold between one way of being and another. It's disorienting, but it's also where all transformation happens. You might need to have difficult conversations with people who love the version of you that fits their expectations. You might need to make changes that don't make sense to anyone else, but feel absolutely necessary to you. You might need to disappoint some people in order to stop disappointing yourself. But as you start living more authentically, something magical happens. The energy you were using to maintain a false self becomes available for creating a true self. The creativity you were suppressing starts flowing. The relationships that were draining you fall away, and connections that energize you begin to appear. The work that felt like drudgery transforms into something that feels like play, or you find work that actually aligns with your values and abilities. Most importantly, you start feeling like yourself in your own skin. You wake up curious about your day instead of dreading it. You make decisions based on what genuinely excites you, rather than what you think you should want. You stop apologizing for taking up space and start contributing your unique gifts to the world. This is what Jung meant when he talked about individuation. It's not selfish self-improvement. It's becoming so authentically yourself that you naturally contribute to the collective good in ways that only you can. It's understanding that the world needs the specific combination of talents, perspectives, and experiences that you bring, but only if you're brave enough to bring them fully. Let me share something that might change how you think about this entire process. These 7 signals, this inner restlessness, this call to transformation, it's not unique to you, it's happening to people all over the world right now. We're living in a time when the old structures, the old ways of organizing a life, the old definitions of success and security are breaking down. More and more people are feeling called to live more authentically, to prioritize meaning over money, connection over status, creativity over consumption. Your unconscious isn't just responding to your individual need for change. It's responding to a collective need for change. The signals you're receiving are part of a larger awakening, a recognition that the way we've been living isn't sustainable for our souls or our planet. By honoring your own call to authenticity, you're participating in something much bigger than personal transformation. You're part of a cultural shift toward more conscious, more connected, more meaningful ways of being human. So when you feel that restlessness, when you notice those synchronicities, when you catch yourself dreaming of a different life, remember that you're not broken. You're not having a breakdown. You're having a breakthrough. Your unconscious mind isn't trying to make your life harder. It's trying to make your life yours. The 7 signals we've explored today are love letters from your deepest self. They're invitations to remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. They're reminders that you have choices you haven't been making and possibilities you haven't been considering. And here's the most important thing I want you to understand. You don't have to have it all figured out before you start listening. You don't need a complete plan for how to transform your life. You just need to start paying attention to what your unconscious is telling you and taking small steps in the direction it's pointing. Maybe that means having an honest conversation with yourself about what you actually want versus what you think you should want. Maybe it means scheduling time for activities that used to bring you joy. Maybe it means saying no to commitments that drain your energy and yes to opportunities that spark your curiosity. Maybe it means finding a therapist or coach who can help you navigate this process of becoming more yourself. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." Your unconscious has been trying to wake you up, to help you see that the life you're living is just one of many possible lives you could live. The signals it's sending aren't problems to be solved. They're possibilities to be explored. If this video has touched something deep inside you, if you recognize yourself in these signals, leave a heart in the comments. Let me know that you're ready to start listening to what your soul has been trying to tell you. Subscribe if you want more content about living authentically and becoming who you really are. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are others out there who are also learning to trust their inner voice, who are also brave enough to become themselves in a world that often rewards conformity. Your unconscious mind has been waiting patiently for you to pay attention. It's been sending you signals, creating synchronicities, even manifesting symptoms, all because it loves you enough to refuse to let you sleepwalk through the one life you get to live. The question now is simple. Are you finally ready to listen?